Hi and welcome back to another week of Read No Grow. This week's book is The Power of Storytelling by Rob Biesenbach. And as usual, if you stay tuned to the end and comment below, you can win a chance of this week's book for completely free. So this book was actually recommended to me on my YouTube course, and stories are really important for conveying a message and trying to keep people engaged. So YouTube videos, obviously, if you're in any kind of social media, trying to keep your presence. So if you're doing any public speaking, say if you're at a wedding and you have to give a speech, or say it's at a funeral and you have to give a speech. These times can be really difficult and quite emotionally charged and quite difficult to actually keep your audience engaged as well. And this book has got some tips on how you can do that. There's also a science behind it, and this book aims to give you the kind of tools and techniques that can help you kind of pick apart a bad story from a good story. And why is it important to have good stories? Well, you can apply good storytelling in so many business settings, like marketing your business, promoting your brand, closing a sale, attracting new customers or investors, rallying your team, aligning people with your strategy, winning over a skeptic, and just becoming very good at networking. So that's just some to name a few. Basically, great stories can change minds, win hearts, and get great results. The thing is, we're conditioned to liking stories. We get stories at bedtime, stories at nursery rhymes, and then as we get older, we get addicted to stories from like Netflix and films. In the book, it describes how our brains are hardwired for stories. And when we hear a story, our brains produce the chemical oxytocin, which produces feelings of desire to cooperate and empathy. So these kind of feelings just warm up our audience. This essentially softens up our audience and makes them more amenable to any of our ideas. And our brain doesn't actually have much distinction from an actual event and hearing a story. The same areas of the brain light up according to studies when an event actually happens and when you hear a story. People are more likely to remember a story than stats. When I think about history, I could never remember the dates of things, but if the teacher explained it with a story, I was so much likely to remember it. So the author describes 6 keys to powerful stories. Number 1 is tapping into our emotions. Studies have shown that if you can engage with emotion, it's likely to resonate so much more with an audience, especially a very provoking emotion, actually like something like provoking empathy with your audience. Number 2 is put a face to your story. People don't really care much about programs and processes, they care about people. So if you can put a character to a story and like back it up, then people are more likely to resonate with it. An example of this could be like climate change. When you actually see someone's house has been completely flooded, instead of just like listening to stats on the news. Number 3 is stories can connect us. So for instance, that person who's had their house flooded because of climate change, we can all sort of put ourselves in that person's shoes. How devastated we would be if we didn't have a house. Number 4 is stories humanize us. They give us an idea of who we are and what values we stand for. For instance, this is really important for leaders. People want to follow a human. They don't want to follow a machine or a robot. Number 5 is they raise the stakes. They raises us up out of the mundane and the ordinary. For instance, like this is why I find comedians so good, because they can take something so mundane, like Michael McIntyre and how he talks about cutting Christmas paper. That is one of the most funniest things I've ever heard. And it's such a boring thing to do, but he brings it to life. Somehow he makes that appealing, and it's something that you can sort of relate to because we all spend Christmas wrapping up presents. Number 6 is stories are about show and not tell. For instance, in an interview, it's better to show who you are than tell who you are by giving examples. You know, an example of this is not being generic. Instead of like, say for an interview, you're listing your qualities like, you know, I'm dependable, I'm good at timekeeping, I'm professional. Give an example of why you were dependable. You know, did you pull an all-nighter one night just so you could get that project over the line for work? Another example where you see this is like on dating sites, say on Tinder, when like people will be like, oh, I'm funny and I'm adventurous, I'm intelligent. Well, why don't you give an example of that? If you're intelligent, maybe why don't you give an example of like one of the books you've just read recently? Or you're funny, why don't you tell a joke in your profile? Make it like kind of quirky. Or adventurous, like show a photo of somewhere you've been that's really cool lately. There we go, there's some dating tips. What is a story? Is it a journey, an experience, a conflict? Or is it something that has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end? In the book, it's described in its simplest form as a character who is in the pursuit of a goal in the face of a challenge or an obstacle. And how the character tried to resolve that challenge is the narrative. Then Rob goes on to say, yeah, we're on first name terms here, how you can bulletproof your story. So number 1 is think of the character. Is it relatable? 2, is there sufficient conflict? Is there any drama? If there's no drama, it's difficult to have a good story. The stakes high enough? Is the world in peril? Is there job at stake? Try and think big. Make sure you're linking the events. Is there a clear cause and effect? Is there an emotional element to it? Emotion fuels stories. If the audience feel emotion, they're more likely to do something. If they feel something, they're more likely to do something. So next, Rob breaks down sort of the beginning, middle, and end of a story. So in the beginning, you're setting the scene, describing the character. You're setting the scene so that something can then happen to offset the balance. Either it be a challenge or an incident. And then the middle is where the character is trying to overcome the challenge. That could be the main meat of your book. And then the end is the resolution. An example for this in the book is a lady who sells products is working and just about to clock off for the night when one of her customers emails her and says the shipment didn't arrive. So she freaks out, panics, and she decides that she's gonna get on a plane and deliver the item herself. The customer then ends up being happy and grateful. So initially there was like setting the scene, they're just clocking off. The incident, the text, and the stress of the customer not getting their delivery, and the resolution, the lady actually traveling to deliver the goods. Again, emotions fuel stories. Think about TV ads of charities or children. They pull on your heartstrings, they make you want to donate. And if you want your audience to do something, you need to make them feel something. And that could be anything, you know, like just feel inspired by you, so they sign up for your course or they start following you. And then the author goes on to talk about sort of vulnerability. And that sometimes people are really scared of like kind of showing their emotions and worried that they might lose control. But in a world where everything's so perfect, vulnerability can actually be really powerful. And it can be powerful because it makes you human. And that raw emotion can make people trust and like you more because they can relate to it. So it's important to focus on your why. Why do you do what you do in your career? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? Why are you trying to help people? Instead of focus on what you do, think of why you do it. Try and center a story around those questions. So again, in kind of a business career setting, building a brand, think about why you do it, not what you do. Why do you get out of bed in the morning? Why do you want to make a difference? Why do you want to make people's lives better in big and small ways? Next, we're on advanced storytelling, how to focus your story. Think about the details. What details are going to elevate your story and what details are going to distract from your story? We don't want excess baggage. Again, why are you telling this story? What do you want your audience to do, or what do you want them to feel? Eliminate the characters that distract from your story. Sometimes there's just too many cooks in the kitchen and there's too many characters in a story. And if you've watched The Simpsons, you know Grandpa Simpson loves to go on a tangent, but you don't want to be Grandpa Simpson. You don't want to be drifting off, you want to stick to the point. Do we really need to know that it was Monday 2 weeks ago at 2 p.m? So try to set the scene but keep it brief. So it's good to think about some of the senses to bring a story to life. So what are you seeing, what are you smelling, what are you feeling? Maybe not all the senses, but to bring a little bit of life to the story. It's also helpful to simplify dates and numbers. So you really need to talk about the deal that you made the 22nd of March 2005, or can you just call it the 2005 deal? You can do this as well by simplifying numbers. So saying several hundred instead of 278. Also helpful to name the known and omit the obscure. A one-time character, they don't really need a full description. The author argues sometimes it's okay to lie, sort of. Compressing the timeline a bit is okay. Is it really going to subtract that much from the story? A good test of this would be if someone was actually at that event, would they recognize that version of your event as fair and truthful? And next is be ruthless at refining your stories. Omit the detail that you don't need. You're trying to engage people's attention. In an age where people are really easily distracted, sometimes it's better to err on skimping on details than boring your audience. Next is how and where to find great stories. You know, you don't want to be the person who's Googling how to tell a good story before your public speaking event. Or say if you've got a wedding speech to deliver, you maybe start watching films about weddings or chatting to people who've been married and what their funny experiences are. And that might give you some inspiration. But basically, you need to have your antenna up. Reading and exploring is really key to getting new stories. So maybe even if it's something that's not exactly in your field of interest, it might make you think about something differently or give you inspiration for something. Or talking to people in your field. Casting a wider net can help you find more inspiration. Key here is drawing from individual experiences are going to make your stories individual and unique. If you're the person Googling stories, then they're probably just going to sound a bit generic or just a bit contrived. Also to remember to write them down. I find that after I meditate, I get some really good ideas. And if I say I'll remember that, then I definitely won't. So try and maybe have a system where you record these stories that you've thought up, the dark side of storytelling. So bad news, you know, disasters, misfortune. Unfortunately, those are the kind of stories that actually do pretty well in the news. When things are really good, sometimes it can get blown out of proportion as well. And to bear in mind, every time we tell a story, it gets reprocessed and scrambled in our brains. So by the telling of the story, just be mindful that you're not swaying too far from the actual truth. And also sometimes it's good to proceed with caution. Sometimes you can elaborate or embellish what you've done. So sometimes it's good just to have a little bit of humility with a story, maybe be careful if it's a team setting. Be mindful that it's not all, I did this, it was me. Remember maybe to include we, us. This is how to use stories in presentations. Presentations, it's good to start with a story, have a few stories throughout and finish on a story. And try not to start with telling them what you're actually going to say, give them a reason to be interested. And the truth is, nobody really cares about what you have to say unless you've got a reason to captivate their interest. Stories that you use should be strategic, they should reinforce your message. They shouldn't just be funny for the sake of funny, they should actually reinforce what you're trying to say. Be careful not to give too many stories, the audience needs some time to digest your previous story. So that would be a good time to give them some general information or a bit of data now, but try not to go too heavy. A presentation is quite good to break it down into 5 parts, such as an intro, 3 main parts, and then a conclusion. But storytelling is an art form, so if you feel like you're given too much data or too many stories, you might need to balance this off. It's quite a good idea to close with a story, maybe giving it a surprising twist or kind of closing from your opening story. Comedians are really good at this. I remember seeing Ross Noble and it drove me mad. I was like, he started off with a story and he just left it, he just forgot about it. But he obviously didn't, he just left you right to the end and then landed an amazing punchline. It gives the audience a feeling of coming full circle around your story and gives it a great deal of satisfaction. And like anything, if you're going to do a presentation, practice, 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 practice. A bit of ad-lib can be quite good, but it can also kill the momentum of the story. So just make sure you've got your story down. Now a key here is to stay connected to your audience. If you have been practicing your presentation, there is a chance it could become a little bit stale and disconnected. You really need to feel like you're in the moment. Kind of think about how actors or stage performers, they have to do the same show night after night after night, but they make it look as if it's their very first night with all that enthusiasm because they live in that moment. They pretend to be right in that present moment. So say if you're describing that you've got a cup of coffee, maybe actually pretend like you've got the coffee in your hand, visualize it, and it's really important to give it energy. Everything you do on stage needs to be a bit bigger than you would do ordinary. More expressions, more gestures, be a bit louder. For me, I'm kind of like shouting at a phone. I wouldn't normally do this in like everyday life, but I need to give more energy. I need to show you more energy as I'm talking to you, because if I'm not interested, how are you going to be interested? How's your audience going to be interested? If I was just doing my YouTube videos like this, you probably wouldn't stay tuned for very long. Varying your voice can help captivate your audience as well. Lowering your voice when it's coming to critical points and like raising it when you're coming up to a punchline, or speeding up as you're coming to a climax. Using your body to create a stage picture is really important. So if you're talking about an angry customer, maybe actually have anger on your face, like portray those emotions. Using your hands, if you're talking about 3 points, use your 3 fingers. Try and get more movement. If you're talking about a passage of time, you could walk from one side of the stage to the other, so it looks like it's like a chronological order of events. If you're talking about someone else, you can maybe pretend you're the other person by moving to a different part of the stage, as if you're having a conversation with that person. Bringing it all together. Content and delivery go hand in hand. You can be a great performer, but if your content is lackluster, people are just going to forget your message. Or the other way, you could have a great story but completely butcher it. If you have a great story and keep practicing it and being sincere, then that can make up for a lot of deficiencies in your presentation technique. But the key is just do your best, be yourself, and believe in what you're saying. Next is how to tell your brand story. Having a personal brand can really set you apart from competitors. If you design your brand right, it can help you prioritize things better. It can be sort of like your guide. If things aren't going right and you don't know what to do, a well-defined brand could help you how to do it. It'll help you ask questions like, do we stand for this? Does this represent us? Does this feel like us? Your personal brand is essentially what you're known for, your unique combination of qualities that make other people want to work with you. If you're a little bit unsure on what your brand is or what you stand for, you can ask people for feedback and reviews. Try to always think on brand. Say yes to things that pull you towards where you want to be in your brand, and no to things that take you away from it. This helps you be authentic, and this helps establish what you're known for by the people who are thinking of doing business with you. And when you're introducing yourself to maybe other businesses, maybe start by saying how you've helped solve other people's problems. And that's a way of sort of showing what you do and talking about yourself without sort of sounding too full of yourself. Next is how to use a story for a toast, eulogy, or a tribute. So top tip for this is try not to give a laundry list of their qualities. It's important if it's like a toast to speak from the heart. Maybe pick one of those qualities and focus on that. Make that the theme of your talk around that quality, and it could either be a big event or a small moment. But then that's when you can attend to the small details, like the sensory details. But be wary to cut out the excess details. We draw on lessons how it will make your life differently if it was like a eulogy. You could even help summarize this by using some sort of quote. And just be wary to mind the clock, because attention spans can be quite short at these sort of things. Something especially like a eulogy, the emotions can be high. So the key in this instance is to practice, practice, practice. That will help you deal with those emotions a little bit better. It's okay to have notes. Be mindful to expect the unexpected. Some things might completely choke you up that you hadn't even anticipated. A certain word might choke you up that you've practiced 100 times but just caught you off guard on the day. And if you get upset, you don't need to keep over apologizing. People understand, it's a funeral. If you do get choked up, just try and pause and breathe and recenter yourself, taking a deep breath. And sometimes humor can actually really work at a eulogy. Sometimes people are wanting just a little respite from the sadness, but be mindful of this, maybe at a toast. Be wary of the inside jokes at weddings. You don't want to isolate your audience. So be wary of eye contact, especially at a eulogy. You might look at someone and they might just make you burst into tears. Try fixating on a neutral point. But most of all, try not to worry about making it perfect, just have more integrity. Stories can be a great way of recounting an event without committing you to any judgment. So say maybe someone passed away and you didn't really get on with them. You could say something like, I always really admired their tenacity because, and then have an example of that. And you're not really saying that you liked or disliked them, you're just kind of recounting something positive about them. And the book sort of ends up by just sort of summarizing that it's so important to be authentic when you're telling your stories. Having an original story and something that you're passionate about is going to make more impact to your audience. That's a wrap for this week's book. So if you want to grab a copy of this, just comment below. And this helpful and you want to know more, remember this is just a summary. Then you can check the link below and you can order the book and have a read of it yourself. Ours is 155 pages long. I thought it was easy to read. Again, it was concise. I'm kind of getting a theme with these books. And I did learn some things that I have implemented going forward. So I did feel like I gained something from reading this book. I also thought it covered a lot of areas in life that I didn't actually appreciate stories would be very useful, like a toast and a eulogy. I never really imagined them as stories. I just kind of thought of them as something separate. And then also about like building your brand and just having conversations in general. I think you can apply this book in a lot of settings. So if you're wanting any tips on being more engaging when you're talking to people or doing any public speaking, I would definitely recommend having me read over this book. And if you enjoyed my video, check out my other 2 videos. Please like, comment and subscribe to help this channel grow. It means so much. Okay guys, thanks, bye! Another week of Read No Grow. This week's book is The Power of Storytelling by Rob Biesenbach. You don't need to be a Jedi Knight to love Star Wars. Star Wars? Yeah. Star Wars, not Sci-Fi. You know, is try to establish trust and credibility with your customer. Yeah. Okay. YouTube videos like this, you probably wouldn't stay tuned for very long. Talking about 3 points, use 3 fingers. If you're talking about 3 points, use 3 fingers. If you have a solid story and keep practicing it and being sincere. If you have a great story